Hey gamers, Kyle here again with Mini Wargaming, and this time I'm here to show you a step-by-step tutorial of how I painted the Galleon from the Warmachine Mercenaries faction. I broke it down into two parts, the first covering just painting the model in general, and the second covering weathering and doing details for the bases, including water effects and just other things like that. This is part 1, and I hope you enjoy it. After I had primed it using Army Painter's Leather Brown Primer, I painted around half the plates of the armor using Leather Brown from Reaper Master Series. In this case I applied it with an airbrush just to quicken things up. After that, I went on to painting the bronze, the first step of which was adding a heavy layer of Citadel Sycorax bronze, thoroughly covering all the areas I would eventually want to be a tarnished bronze on the finished model. I then mixed up a wash by adding water to green pigment and turquoise paint, and then applied it generously to the model. The goal wasn't just to get into the cracks, but also to get it over the entire model, so the entire surface of the bronze is somewhat green and dirtied. After the wash had dried, I then dry brushed heavily all the areas I had just washed green with a mix of Sycorax bronze and shining gold also from Citadel. Don't try to make it so the entire surface is gold and bronze. Try to allow at least some of the green to show through from the bottom layer, just to add some variety to the flat surface of the armor. To finish the bronze, I then painted the wash back into the cracks of the armor and around the edges on the surfaces. I did this to deepen the green color on the cracks, and to bring out areas that might have been dry brushed over, like around the nuts and bolts, and ridges on the flat surfaces of the armor. Here's how the bronze looks once it's done. I then moved on to painting the non-brown areas of the armor plates. For this I chose to use Citadel Stegodon Scale Green, poorly named since the paint is actually blue. Next, I went over the model and painted the areas I had not chosen to paint bronze with Privateer Press Paint's Pig Iron. Lastly, I went back over the areas I had airbrushed originally, and repainted Leather Brown by Reaper Master Series onto the areas I may have painted over when doing the other sections. Here's how it looks with the 4 primary color sections painted. I then painted the coral I had added on using Citadel's red gore. I also painted the seaweed using Citadel's Warpstone Glow. I painted the cargo the Galleon was carrying using Steel Legion Drab from Citadel, and then painted the chains and the fasteners using pig iron as before. I then moved on to the base, painting all the sand I attached using Creamy Ivory from Reaper Master Series. Once it had dried, I then painted the areas where I had not put sand, which were meant to be the deeper areas of the water, using a mix of leather brown and creamy ivory. I then gave all the sandy areas a wash of Seraphim Sepia from Citadel. And to finish it all off, I gave all the sand a light dry brush of creamy ivory. I moved on and painted the rocks using Dawnstone from Citadel, and then dry brushed them using a mix of Dawnstone and white. I then painted the wooden planks I had added onto the base for the shipwreck using Steel Legion Drab, and then once it was dried, dry brushed it with creamy ivory. I then painted the metal crossbeam from the shipwreck, as well as the cannonball in the water, using pig iron. I then painted the seashells using a mix of red gore and white, and then gave them a wash of Caraberg Crimson from Citadel. I then highlighted the coral using a 1-to-1 mix of red gore and white. The last step of this part was to add a glaze of Waywatcher Green, and then a wash of Agrax Earthshade, both from Citadel, to the seaweed. Here's the Galleon painted to the end of this part, including almost all the base colors and the highlighting, only missing the weathering and the water effects that I'll add in part 2. If you'd like to see part 2 and how it eventually turns out looking like this, you can find a link in the description or to the right. I hope you enjoyed it, thanks for watching.